I'm loving the pop off.
What's good? Welcome back to the Pop Off Podcast, a conversation show about the NFL. Being as back as it's ever been. Week 1 just finally wrapped up. The Jets and 49ers played in San Francisco. Niners just kicked their ass. I'm Ralph Compiano. I'm your host, and I'm joined for the first time in a long time by the muscle of rent money, one of my beloved friends, role models, doppelgangers, and pop-off pod rosters, really the power forward of our group, the Paul Millsap of an institution, Adam Capsh, a.k.a. Old Chisum. And Capsh, the Niners just stuck it to the fucking Jets, dude. Like, it was remarkable. They looked flawless. They're a well-oiled machine, even without Christian McCaffrey. What do you think of the NFL being back?
I think every single year that passes in the NFL, you really notice good teams versus great teams in matchups like this one, and it is 100% of the coaching. Like, if this is not a Shanahan coach team, it's probably an even game, and vice versa, right? Say that you have LaFleur, somebody coaching the Jets, anybody capable of coaching their defensive secondary or even one linebacker, like, hey, let's not let them beat us to the flat, right? Like, let's beat the third running back option from San Francisco and not let them get outside. But they didn't. They didn't stop anything. It's super, super impressive to watch a Shanahan and Andy Reid, et cetera, coach at the NFL level. We're fully back.
And the Jets aren't like a chump defense. That was actually my biggest question coming away from this game. It's like, you bring up Kyle Shanahan being a genius, but Robert Saleh is a guy who's the defensive coordinator for the Niners a few years ago. He gets this Jets job because of the job that he did with that Niners team. And all of the press and media that surrounded him over the last couple of years has really just led me to believe that this guy is an idiot. Like, he's a mongoloid just walking on the sidelines. I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. I don't think he's a good football coach. I think that he was the beneficiary of a Shanahan team and a John Lynch put together defense that had the Warners and the Bosas and the Wards. And that's why he was a good defensive coordinator. And then he inherits this defense with the Jets, where you have, Williams and Mosley and Sauce, and DJ Reed's no chump. And you have all of these ballers on that end. And everybody's like, oh, dude, he's a defensive mastermind. He's all this kind of stuff. But when he runs into a Shanahan offense, which he has more experience with than literally any other head coach in the league other than the guys that come from that system, he can't stop them without Christian McCaffrey. So, you're the host of our college football pod, Rent Money. I'm starting to think of the Niners the same way that I think about a team like Georgia, where it's like they're just bigger, better, faster, stronger, and smarter than everybody that they run into. Like, you should not be allowed to lose not just Christian McCaffrey, but his label, Offensive Player of the Year last year, one of the best running backs of a generation. And instead, what you do is you just go get an undrafted free agent, and he comes in, and what did he have? He had 28 carries for 147 yards and a touchdown, and he looked like beast mode. Like, he was like prime Marshawn Lynch tonight on national TV, and the Jets just got fucking embarrassed. Do you have any thoughts on Saleh that differ from mine, or like, am I right to be thinking that this dude's just a dipshit?
I think other than that, the only other thought you can have is, today's September 9th. We're 2 days out from the greatest tragedy in American history. And I just think it is absurd for a team literally called the New York Jets to hire a Muslim as their coach and expect things to work out. Like he was going to be the guy to right the wrongs that happened 20 some years ago. And that's, and like, it is funny. That is a joke. That's a stand-up bit that I've heard somewhere. I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm the genius that's taking credit for this. However, I heard that joke right after he got hired, and over time it is aged like just fine wine. I don't know if it's just specifically because this is the Jets. It doesn't matter who they bring in. It doesn't matter who's coaching. They're just doomed. Like at one of those points, you have to wonder if there is some type of vex or curse on this team. Like Breece Hall fumbling, dropping passes, like Breece looked off. Aaron Rodgers, I was not expecting him to have a great game by any means. This is his first time playing in damn near 2 years.
Yep.
And it's like, you got to let him knock the rust off. And of all teams for him to do that against, of course, it is the 49ers. But I'm really curious to see from, I guess, more so a fantasy perspective, the chemistry that Rodgers builds with new receivers. Because tonight it was kind of a lot of Lazard, and that's just a guy that Rodgers is comfortable with. He trusts. He's known from his time in Green Bay. But on, like, you saw Garrett Wilson make a couple of really nice grabs. How long will it take for those two to get on the same page? Because I'm pretty high on Wilson in a lot of leagues that I'm in this year. But outside of that too, like, I think that's the biggest question. Is this defense actually mid / are they soft? Because that was the biggest thing that I saw, is they just got bullied. Like, from a physicality standpoint, Sauce Gardner was on the sideline for however many, like, did he ever even come back in, or was he, because
Well, all right. So I like the point about soft, because that's why I bring up Georgia's. They just make teams look soft. And I think that's
bullied?
more a product of the Niners. It's just like, okay, the Jets want to get to this place that we've been at for years. And the Jets were no means soft the last couple of years. I think they do have like really good talent on that side of the ball. I would never look at Quinnen Williams, who's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league right now, and say that guy's soft. Like, he's a special talent. Sauce, I think, had one big tackle on Debo, but that was after he had broken 3 tackles on that reverse play, and then Sauce had to be the one to make that tackle. And it's like, that's not what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to shut down an entire side of the field, like a Ramsey or Surtain or Revis, and just essentially scare the shit out of quarterbacks. To your point about Garrett Wilson, though, we have seen Rodgers, like, once he does build that chemistry with his number one receiver, he just fucking peppers them with targets. Like, Devontae Adams in his heyday was getting like 160, 170, 180 targets in a season. And there was one drive, their scoring drive, where that looked like the truth. It looks like he was just really comfortable with Wilson. He was identifying spots in the zone on third down, and he was just getting to those spots where Rodgers liked him. But it's like, that guy, can I ask you something about Garrett Wilson? His sleeves were a little bit longer tonight. They're like as long as mine on my shoulders right now. And he didn't look as swaggy. He also changed the number from 17 to 5, which I liked 17 on him. I thought he looked good in it. And I had no idea that over the last couple of years, his first 2 years in the league, he had 178 catches with 7 different quarterbacks. So I think there's a reason for you to be high on him in fantasy. I'm high on him in fantasy. I think we should let the listeners know that you're a fantasy psychopath and you're in 15 leagues, so it'd be hard for you not to be high
8.
on anybody.
I'm in 8 leagues for the record.
You were in 15. But who was the one that said they were in 15 in the chat?
I think that was Turner making a joke about me.
Okay.
Just a little bit of a hyperbole, if you will. But yeah,
he's been known to bend the truth.
I was gonna say I live for fantasy. I have probably for the last 7-8 years now. I've been in at least 4 leagues at a time. I've recently grown to add some dynasty and some keeper leagues. We did the auction draft for the pop-off pod this year. I think everything about it is, when you view it from a similar lens as I talk about frequently on the Rent Money pod, it is a side hustle, right? Like, if you can have 1 or 2 leagues that, because of your strategy throughout the draft at the beginning, but then also your ability to maneuver the waiver wire and make a trade, maybe 2, like, that's income. So it's fun to do it that way. It's fun to have a few leagues that you can also just fuck around in. I don't want to slight anyone who just views fantasy as like boom or bust. Like, I'm right there with you in a couple, but I mean, when you're playing in leagues that are $300, $400, $500 buy-ins, like, you kind of have to show up and fuck, or else, you know, you're not getting invited back to the mansion.
2 names that we need to mention from this game that we haven't yet. Fred Warner. I think a large part in what, like, everywhere Breece Hall went tonight, Fred Warner was already there. So Breece had 16 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Coming into the season, you know, he was number 1 or number 2 in every single fantasy draft, it seemed like. If you're going in auction league, he was going for like $60. And then Brock Purdy. What more does Brock Purdy have to do to earn our respect to talk about him as like a top 5, top 6 quarterback? Because we always have Herbert over him, Allen, Burrow, Lamar. When this guy finished either second or third in MVP last year, he set franchise records for the Niners for yards and touchdowns, I believe. I think he was 32-11 touchdown interception ratio, 4,200 yards. And this is a franchise that had Joe Montana and Steve Young. Granted, different generations, different kind of styles of quarterback.
And Jerry Rice existed in one of those eras. Yeah.
Franchise like records with the 49ers, that has to mean something. And for some reason, every time I see a top 10 quarterback list, mine included, he's outside of it. So what more does he have to do to be a staple inside of those? Like, what else can he do?
You know what the funniest thing about him is I was watching him play almost immediately, like first drive, I was like, all right, let's see if he still has it. And I had a thought that kind of came to me, and I was like, I think a lot of the reason people don't give as much respect, aside from him being like, whatever you want to say about him being a scheme quarterback, like, who isn't? Every quarterback is. Like, look at Sam Darnold this week. You finally put him in a Kevin O'Connell offense, and he looks like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL all of a sudden. But my thing with Brock is, from an eye test perspective, he's not a guy that fucking zips the ball, right? Like, he's probably towards the lower rankings, maybe even dead last when it comes to arm strength and like speed of which the ball gets out. But because of his IQ and honestly, like, his above average athletic ability to make certain plays happen when he's scrambling out of the pocket, doing whatever he needs to, I think his IQ puts him at a level where he's significantly more successful because of the scheme he's in. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to say like, oh, you could throw him anywhere and it's going to be fine. You can't do that with anyone anymore, except for maybe Lamar and Josh Allen. And that's purely because if they need to, they can, break off a 30, 40-yard run and like fuck around and see what happens. Mahomes will never do that because Mahomes is too smart and he knows his value and his worth as a quarterback in the NFL. You're getting, 500 mil over 10 years. Like, you can kind of milk that a little bit. We don't need to get every single yard on every single play. Like, they'll come. Purdy is kind of similar in my mind at this point, where Purdy's like, look, I've proved myself. I know I'm not making bank yet, but I will, because I've shown since literally day one. Since day fucking one, he outplayed Trey Lance, right? Like, he did everything he had to go from, we'll see if this guy makes the roster, to leading them to Super Bowls in a better fashion too than Jimmy G ever did or could. And Jimmy G was always the fucking prodigy, golden boy, Tom Brady's apprentice, whatever.
Yep.
In reality, he was just like the fantasy. Like, every 40-year-old mom in the country, when they were getting ass blasted by their husbands, just closed their eyes and thought of Jimmy G, and everything was okay for a while, right? And I think that might be the beginning of the downfall of America, is when he hung it up. What did they have to think about? Nothing, right? You what do you think about in order to feel pleasure, from this act of,
Brock Purdy looks like a child. Jimmy Garoppolo looks like Calvin Klein model.
Right.
But to your point of like, he might not have like the velocity coming off of his arm the same way that Josh Allen does, but he has like the arm angle throws where it's like, oh, this guy played shortstop, and we talk about him in that vein. The same way we do Stafford, Goff, Mahomes, maybe Goff a little bit less, but definitely Mahomes, Lamar, Stafford. They all throw from different arm angles, right? And that's what separates them. They can get it around defenders, over defenders, whatever. But to the scheme point, it's like, all right, Patrick Mahomes plays for Andy Reid. He is one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of football.
Probably the greatest. If we're who would you put above him?
Well, I think Shanahan's like the only guy that's in the same conversation with him. It's him, McVay, and Reid right now. You can have whoever you want. I just think from a run perspective, like,
we got to talk about how good the Rams offense looked,
and how good his pecs look, dude. His fucking chest is chiseled in that dry fit shirt. He looked good. And Shanahan had some flow slipping out the back of his hair, same way the defensive coordinator did for the Niners. Like, they got the flow going right now.
They're getting frisky.
I think Purdy's like unbelievable. Like, I'm all in on him. I hope he gets fucking paid, because it's like, if Deshaun Watson can get $240 million, why shouldn't this guy? He's completely outproven everybody. And I think like one of like the key narratives of a quarterback and their story and their leadership is just who they are as a person. And he's won over that locker room. And that's probably not the easiest locker room in the world to win over, because they already like Jimmy G, and they were probably hoping that Trey Lance was going to be a stud. And it's just this dude from Iowa State that comes in, and it's just like, oh, Debo would die for him. Trent Williams will fight for him. And all these guys are just like at his back. And sure, we get it. He has all the skill position players in the world. He's set up in the perfect position. But we've seen guys come into this offense, and they're not taking them to Super Bowls. Like Mullins or Beathard, whoever it might be. It's like even Trey Lance couldn't get it done here. Beathard might have been able to, sure. But
Beathard, honestly, of all of the guys you just named, other than, honestly, maybe even including Jimmy G, like Jimmy G had some good games. Beathard always performed. Whenever they threw him in, like he would just be like, all right, fuck it, here goes nothing. And it's like you don't see it as much anymore, because a lot of the backup quarterbacks in the NFL are just true journeymen. Like they understand that is long-term play. Like they could be a QB2, QB3 in the NFL for 15 years. I.e. Jarrett Stidham, even though he thinks that he could be a starter. Chase Daniel, another great example. For me, with the Steelers, I think of Charlie Batch, right? The greatest backup quarterback ever. Like, he was there for 25 fucking years, I swear to God. He's like the dog that just wouldn't die. Like, you kept coming back from college, and you're like, how are you still here? We haven't even, touched the diaper you've been wearing for the last 3 years.
Nobody's fed you. Nobody let you outside. You're just pissing wherever you want. That's the Fitzpatrick mold. He just pisses wherever he wants, and then he gets some attention. Then he really shows up. Like, you throw a banger, and all the chicks are around that dog. That's Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. That is Fitz. No one wanted to be around Charlie Batch, though, but he still got it done. I think that's kind of like the blend of where we are right now in the NFL, is because think of like Taylor Heineke, too. Another guy that's like, he will never in a million years be a starter. But honestly, on that immediate eye test alone, Brock Purdy is just a better Taylor Heineke. They're both just sneaky athletic white guys. They're short. They don't have a ton of arm strength, and they have to fully rely on their ability to A, read a defense, but B, have a game plan set so that they can execute it within their God-given human ability. And Purdy has just found a way to do that week in, week out, every single time he's on the field. And it's honestly something that people need to just stop trying to find a reason to hate the guy, and just sit back and be like, holy fuck, this is even more impressive that he's able to go out and do this every single time, because no one else has in NFL history, to my knowledge, other than Tom Brady. And it's not like we're going to sit here and start comparing Brock Purdy to Tom Brady, but who else has defied odds like this? Not one person other than the GOAT comes to mind.
Yeah, like late round quarterbacks, you just don't hear about them that often. I guess like Dak was like a 3rd or 4th round pick, but this is literally Mr. Irrelevant, like the very last, the 262nd overall pick in the NFL draft. So
literally, yeah.
And like he's, I think there's something to be said. Like, he still has that innate chemistry. Like, if you look at the Niners receivers tonight, it's like Ayuk wasn't anything special. Debo didn't do anything too crazy. Kittle, like, nobody had 100 yards. He just peppers the ball around. He gets it to the right time, the right place. Juszczyk made a big catch. Like, it's familiar faces, huge. But then we're going to add in Ricky Pearsall coming in soon. White boy Rick looking good on the sidelines. I didn't know that the gunshot that he suffered was an enter and exit wound. He got shot in the chest, and it didn't hit any internal organs, and it just went in and out. Like, that's unbelievable. That is real life movie shit.
He's lucky to be alive, first of all.
100%.
Whether it hit anything or not, lucky to be alive. Second, the fact that cop was able to just keep him on Earth and he doesn't bleed out is insane. And the fact that he's just standing on the sidelines today is like, I mean, what the fuck? Brian Robinson, same thing happens last year, but maybe that's a different conversation, is why are these fucking rookies getting shot so much? Wasn't Tank Dell involved in a shooting in the offseason too? It's like, fellas, and for him specifically too, like, who in Migos just got murdered at a bowling alley? Like, yeah, brother, what are you doing? Like, keep your fucking head on a swivel. You do it on a slant route. Do it, out in the streets. And I love Houston. It's a great city, great food. But, like, if I'm going to Memphis to get some barbecue, right? Like, I know for a fact that young Dolph stirred the pot thanks to Yo Gotti and his cousin, and I'm keeping my shit on straight. These rookies need to fucking do the same.
They need to dial
It's
it
ridiculous.
in a little bit. They need to, but I think Pierce was like happening at a bank. They said, which is just like that's tragic. So like, it was like the opening
absurd.
scene of Heat
was like
or some shit. Like what the
It was
fuck?
like a robbery. It was like a literal robbery that just went wrong, and maybe that's just his fault. For
bank online, like everything's accessible through apps now. Like why are we going to the bank physically in person?
Justin
anymore?
Herbert's biggest sponsor is SoFi.
SoFi,
they're all about they're all like fuck your bank. Like we'll do it on your phone. I'm a Chime guy personally, but like same shit applies. Like Ricky, hit me up. I got referral codes every month. We could both make some money out of this shit, dude. Like you get 100, I get 100. This is easy.
You should refer me. I'm not using Chime yet. All right, let's move into the slate for this weekend. We had it was just nice to be on the couch. I had Red Zone on one TV, isolated a game on the other. Felt great about it. So let's actually start with what I thought was probably the most entertaining game of the weekend and has two of my 5 favorite quarterbacks in the league. The Texans going into Indianapolis, beating the Colts 29-27. Colts cover plus 2.5 because the Texans opted to not take a PAT on one of their touchdowns. They decided to go for 2. CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, two completely different quarterbacks from the same draft class. Stroud kind of in that, surgeon Phillip Rivers mold where it's like he's going to beat you inside of the pocket. He's going to throw with different arm angles, like we've said, take advantage of the new wide receiver in Stephon Diggs, and then he has that chemistry with Dell and Nico Collins. And then there's Anthony Richardson, who I don't know who to compare him to because we've never seen some shit like this before in our life.
Cam Newton is literally
Josh
the
Allen,
only.
like that's really it.
Maybe,
like he made a throw like off that back foot that's going viral as well as it should. It was unbelievable. Like I just can't put into words. Like you cannot articulate some of the shit that he does. If you were a franchise owner, which one of these two quarterbacks would you rather have? Because I think 90% of the public is going to say Stroud. I would too, but there's 10% of those crazies out there that would do whatever it takes to just have 6-7 years of this batshit maniac in Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. It honestly depends because you put Anthony Richardson in Houston and vice versa. You put CJ Stroud in Indy. Neither of them are going to do as well. Those offenses were both built for guys exactly like this. You need a guy that can be a playmaker in Indy because like they don't really have the receivers that you would want for a quarterback like a CJ Stroud that can sit in the pocket, maybe, scramble around for, enough time to get a throw off and find a Diggs, a Collins, which for the record, Nico Collins might be the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL.
So fucking good.
We'll touch on that. But the other wide receiver in this game that I was like, okay,
Alec
Pierce.
Yep.
Go white boy. I was sitting on my couch like, go white boy. And I literally, I couldn't believe him in and of himself. I was getting Austin Collie flashbacks. But then on top of that, the biggest thing that I noticed was not just, oh my God, Anthony Richardson has a cannon of an arm. We've known that he does. He's shown it in college. The bigger thing to me was watching a Houston Texans defense give up three different 50-plus yard completions.
Mm-hmm.
They got burnt over the top. Like you invest in Stingley, you invest in these guys that are going to not let that happen, and then you give up 3 of them. I'm really curious to see what the game plan looks like moving forward because it's obviously when you're going up against a banged up in your mind banged up from last year Anthony Richardson, you're like, oh, we probably need to worry more about his legs than we do his arm. Wrong. But I mean, think about some of the other teams that Houston has coming up the next few weeks on their schedule. We'll see how that goes. And then on the other side of the ball for Houston too, Stroud was pressured. I read this stat earlier. Stroud was pressured on 38% of his dropbacks, and he was sacked 4 times. You can't let that happen if you are the Houston Texans and this is year 2 for a guy that needs to continue growing to get to the level that you want him and he wants to be at, more than once out of every 3 times he's getting pressured on a drop back is unacceptable as an offensive line. Like the offense as a whole needs to figure out where the fuck their game plan went wrong, because they're honestly, the Houston Texans are lucky to have won this game. If it wasn't for Joe Mixon, they don't win this game.
It's just funny looking at their stats against one another. CJ Stroud was through 32 passes. He completed 24 of them, right? So about, what is that, 3 out of 4 right there? 234 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, average yards per attempt, we're looking a little bit less than 7 to 8. And he's spreading it out. Collins 6 catches, Dell 3, Diggs 6, Schultz 3, Mixon 3. So he's spreading it around. And then on the other hand, Anthony Richardson just 9 for 19, like less than 50% completion percentage, 212 yards. So just 20 less yards on 15 less completions, because he's throwing to Alec Pierce, who had 3 catches for 125 yards. Like, that's absurd, right? Like over 40 yards per catch for a white guy just sprinting down the field. But to your point about Richardson, it's like, Shane Steichen is his play caller. Where's he coming from? He's coming from Philadelphia, where he had Jalen Hurts. And he prides himself on being able to attack with a quarterback as a rusher, right? Getting that additional blocker, being able to use Jonathan Taylor as a blocker because he's probably the best decoy in the backfield for them. And then when you start to crouch up a little bit, because you have, I think it's Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward are the safeties in Houston, they have to start coming a little bit closer, which is opening up those avenues for a guy like Alec Pierce over the top. So they're trying to take away that run because Richardson can't be such a threat with the ball. He had 6 carries for 56 yards and a touchdown, almost 10 yards per carry. That's what's allowing them to go deep. And then he just gets to unleash that arm talent. But 9 for 19, it's like, all right, this guy's like, there's been a stat going around that he started 17 games at quarterback since high school between Florida and here. Like, he played 4 games last year, got injured in 2 of them by halftime and had to sit out, and then he was out the rest of the season. So he's still learning. I think that's what's so exciting about him.
That's terrifying.
It's the Josh Allen thing where it's like, his first couple years in the league, he's kind of just getting warmed up. Like, it's the question of, can we work on accuracy? It turns out you can, because he's one of the most accurate throwers in the league now. And I think Richardson has a lot of that in him. But then there's Stroud, and it's like, oh, dude, he's already that accurate. He's already like dissecting defenses on his own. He's so fucking smart, and he's just going to pick your poison. But you're right. You have to protect him, because if you can protect him, he's going to, in my mind, I think he's the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th best quarterback in the league. I think he's leapfrogged Burrow because of the Burrow wrist injury. That concerns me. I think now Stroud is in the same conversation as Pat. Well, not Pat, but he's in the same conversation with Lamar and Josh to be the 2nd best quarterback in the league. I really think that. Like, I think he's unbelievable. There was that play where he drops back into play action. He slips, and from his knees, he delivers just a strike on a 3rd down. And it's like, oh, dude, that shit's ridiculous. Like, he's just so special. Like, if Caleb could become 80 to 90% of that, I would be astounded. I would be so fucking happy if we could get 80 to 90% of Stroud and Caleb.
I mean, they're completely different quarterbacks. I've been on record saying multiple times that I think Caleb, from a play style standpoint, is just Johnny Manziel 2.0. I would go down saying that. His first game proved that, but does it prove my take is correct? God, no. He has such a long career to go, and I genuinely think he will do much better in the NFL, because he seems to have a sense of humility that at the same time, you're like, the best quarterbacks in the league right now have a sense of humility. Like, all of the guys we have talked about so far tonight, none of them are going to walk in to a room day one and just, be like, yeah, this is fucking mine. Like, I own this. Fuck you. They've won the room over, like the Strouds, the Richardsons. Somehow, like, these guys have been able to emotionally invest in their teammates, their offensive lines in particular. We'll see how it shakes up and goes down. But I mean, if I'm a Bears fan, I'm just fucking psyched that the special teams and the defense look the way that they do, even if it is against the fucking Titans. Like, you're not winning that game a year ago.
So we can talk about them next because we talked about this game, Cerrone and I, last Friday. Bears cover. They end up winning by 7, in no part thanks to the offense whatsoever.
None.
But I was harping on how good this fucking defense can be and should be. The secondary, I've been talking about Tyreek Stevenson all offseason. He gets a pick. Jalen Johnson gets the game-sealing pick. I thought Brisker and Byard were both really solid on the back end. And then at the front, we have, I believe, Darrell Taylor is his name that we just traded for from Seattle. He gets 2 sacks, forced fumble. And granted, we're going against Will Levis, so it's not like, the most inspiring quarterback to dominate. But at the same time, that's what you're supposed to do if you're going to be a good defense. You have to take advantage of the shitty quarterbacks that are going to be on your schedule. And the Bears' schedule, not the hardest of all time, right? Like, we're coming into this. I just learned actually that when they're making the schedule, all of the 4th place teams in the division end up playing each other the next year. Had no idea. I just knew that we play one division and then we play another division, and great. That's pretty much it. I think we play the AFC South, so we'll play against Texans, Jags, Colts, whatever, and Titans obviously, and then we'll play against I think the NFC West too because we have the Rams and Niners on our schedule. But then they also get to play all the 4th place teams, which is a huge benefit. So we're going to see some shitty quarterbacks or some young quarterbacks at the very least. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I did have high expectations going into this game for Caleb, and I'm patient. That's what I've learned. I just have to be patient with this. I don't mind the Manziel comparison, actually, just from a play style standpoint, because
they're very similar.
I think the thing that doomed Manziel, obviously, has been documented well enough. He had a Netflix show about it, but, I don't foresee Caleb getting addicted to alcohol or coke or anything like that.
No.
I think that he's got his head on straight, and he's a baller. And I think Johnny was a baller, too. He just ended up in Cleveland. And like we were talking about with Purdy, sometimes the system does matter, or maybe the system always matters.
It always matters. And I will double, triple, quadruple down on that. You don't win games unless you have the right guys in the right system at the NFL. Everybody, the parity of talent is too similar for you to not have massive advantages when it comes to coaching and scheme. And if you're not able to be flexible, or if you're not able to dominate playing the game a very specific way, you have to have the right guys in the right places. And so obviously, a guy like Brock Purdy that's costing you less than $1 million a year, huge fucking advantage, because every other quarterback in the league costs minimum of 8 minimum. You get to spread 7 to however many mil across the rest of your offense now because of that decision.
Or if you're the Chiefs and you have to pay Pat 50, then you get a $50 million difference.
Yeah. Yep. And it's goodbye Tyreek, goodbye all these weapons. Are you worth $50 million is the question. And that's why I've always discredited a Kirk Cousins. I've always discredited a Dak Prescott, because are these guys top 10 quarterbacks? Sure. But are they good enough to outweigh the advantages you get of investing at your skill positions, your offensive line? No. And historically, they've proven that time and time again. And that's the unfortunate part that I will say about the current state of the NFL, is that if you don't go and draft your guy, you're fucked. You're not going to sign a free agent quarterback and come out and have a great year.
Well, and to your point, the difference between the first best quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, and the third best quarterback, whoever that is, might be as big of a difference between that third guy and the 22nd guy. And that's kind of the problem. It's yeah, you can pay Kirk Cousins, but all right, he's getting now paid the same amount of money as Patrick Mahomes. You have to be so fucking smart about how you spend that money elsewhere. And guess what? The Chiefs front office, they're not dumb. They're retaining Chris Jones. They said bye to L'Jarius Sneed because they drafted Trent McDuffie. They have that luxury. They're able to do that because they draft so well. They develop the talent so well. Versus all right, the Falcons, you get Kirk Cousins. Now you're going to have to be, really wise with how you spend those dollars. All right, and you can pay pennies for Matt Judon and Justin Simmons. But how much of a difference is that really going to make?
I don't know if, obviously, the Falcons are going for a long play here. If you're going to pay Cousins, you're expecting Penix to take a seat and learn.
Yep.
And while I definitely want him to do well, no matter how much I've hated him in the past from his days at Indiana and onward. Like, I don't know if that's even an option anymore because you're letting the league pass you by everywhere else. Like, you're letting your skill players like Bijan is now just like, why is he here? Why do you have Bijan? All of these other guys. And it's like, if you're, especially at running back, you know, like that's the only thing that makes that a questionable move for me is you're taking top running back of the last however many, probably since Christian McCaffrey and Bijan, and you're just going to shit away that rookie contract in order to let Penix now wait it out, you know, take his lap and learn a thing or two from the bench. Like,
but I think they made this as a win now move. I think that's why they got Kirk, because they looked at the NFC and they're like, okay, we don't have Mahomes in our conference, but then they come out week 1.
You don't do that. You don't win now when you also draft a quarterback ninth.
Yep.
Ninth. If you get Penix in the second, totally different conversation.
Right.
But when you're drafting in the first round of the NFL draft, if that guy's not on the field, damn near day 1, but at least by week 8, like if you're taking an offensive tackle and you want to make sure that he's getting an understanding of blocking, sure, great. Steelers did it last year with Broderick Jones. It worked out great. But like if you're gonna draft a quarterback and then go out and spend big time money on a veteran, big time money. Like the Steelers didn't do that with Russ, you know? Like they invested free agent Bucks and Fields and a 1-year contract for Russ. And that's the only possible way in my mind you can do that while still having a win now mentality. If you're giving up a top 10 pick in the NFL draft while also simultaneously investing tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in the same position, you're begging to get your fucking backs blown out and try again in 3 years because you're now looking at probably upwards of 3 to, if they're lucky, 5-year rebuild.
Because they could have gotten Jared Verse or Dallas Turner or any one of these guys. Like a defensive player didn't get drafted to like the 14th or 15th pick. And it's like, oh, the 16th pick in the draft just made a huge difference on Sunday Night Football. It's like, yeah, Jared Verse was never supposed to be the 16th pick. Like he was a fucking, you know, he's one of the best edge rushers in the class.
Dude, him and Dallas Turner, bro, I was shocked at the draft when they didn't take Dallas Turner. I was like, what the fuck are we doing here? And Kirk probably was thinking the same thing. He's like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, you just paid me how much money and now I have a competition. Like, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we've kind of moved naturally into Steelers-Falcons. So the Steelers win 18-10. As always, Mike Tomlin covers as an underdog on the road in Atlanta. Justin Fields gets the start here. You know, his hometown. He's from Georgia. Gets to play in Atlanta for his first career start with Steelers. Is there anything that you saw from him in this game where you're like, yes, this is the quarterback of our future? I mean, he led you to 6 field goal drives for Chris Boswell.
Yes.
Just didn't convert on any touchdowns.
No, that's like, I think to be, and this is gonna be weird to most NFL fans, but to be a good Steelers quarterback, it is way less to do with how many touchdowns did you have than it does with how many turnovers did you give up.
Sure.
Like the Steelers, and it sucks because I have to watch black and gold play the exact same style of football Saturday as I do Sunday between the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Pittsburgh Steelers, but beat you as a team, as a franchise, post Big Ben's glory years, not because we're going to go out and drop 50 points. We haven't done that in maybe a decade. We're going to beat you because we play the grittiest, grinded out style of football that is known to man, which is we're going to pound the rock. We're going to throw these short checkdowns. And then even if we punt the ball, we're going to put you deep in your own territory. And guess what? Here's TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith off the edges to absolutely fuck your day up. Chances are, because of our field position advantage, we're getting a turnover, maybe 2, maybe 3. That's exactly what you saw happen on Sunday with the Steelers-Falcons game. But honestly, I was super impressed because Fields outplayed Kirk. And granted, Kirk's going against probably, and I'm biased here, but until I'm proven wrong, the Steelers are the best defense in the NFL because of their ability to force turnovers.
And they got better this year.
And by the Steelers, I truly do mean TJ Watt. He is a generational talent. The fact that anyone thinks Myles Garrett is better is, I mean, you're out of your fucking mind. You don't know ball. You've never watched tape in your life. And I'm very, very convinced that you're just
Stubborn, idiot, stupid.
No, because by all means, by all measurables, when it comes to athleticism, when it comes to strength, Myles Garrett is the guy. But when it comes to stats, I don't think he's ever once outplayed TJ statistically in a year. Whether you want to be like, oh, he's in a 3-4, he's a 4-3. I don't really care. On paper, they're playing the same position.
Yep. Well, TJ's the only player, they flashed this graphic a few times, but the only player in NFL history to lead the league in sacks 3 separate occasions, 3 separate years. And he got a sack taken away from him because of a stupid offsides because he just timed it too well.
And he was not. Yeah. I promise you, go back and watch the fucking tape. TJ Watt was not offside. He is just that good at watching film that he knew the silent counts for the Falcons. And he literally was on record saying this, that Steeler Nation showed out so well that the fucking home team, Atlanta Falcons, had to move to a silent count early in the game, and he knew when to jump the snap. He was never once offsides before the ball was snapped, ever. He jumped the snap probably as good, if not as perfect, as you could ever jump a snap in a football game, and he got ruled offsides because of it, because guess what? The exact same thing happens on the flip side, where if a tackle moves a little bit early against the TJ Watt, against the Myles Garrett, against the Micah Parsons, they're not getting called because the refs themselves have been on record saying if we were to call that every time, we would call it every time because you're too good. It is unfair. And that is the state of NFL football in a nutshell. The refs control too much, in my opinion. They always have and they always will. This weekend in particular, and you saw it particularly, if you don't believe me, go and look at every single score of kickers in your fantasy league right now. If you don't believe me that the refs have too much control, it has nothing to do with execution. It has nothing to do with the ability of certain teams to get third down conversions. They got them. A majority of them are getting called back because of a phantom flag here, a random flag there. And I'm not saying this shit is scripted. I'm not saying it's one thing or another other than the jurisdiction that is the NFL Ref Association is drunk with power, and they have been for years. They have a bigger impact on games today than teams themselves do, and that is despicable.
Well, even just watching the difference between Saturday and Sunday, it just doesn't feel like there's as many flags being thrown on Sunday or Saturday.
And that's ridiculous.
And then Sunday, it's just like, and it's like, all right, well, one of these guys are professionals. Well, I guess the others aren't amateurs anymore because a lot of them are getting paid. But they're younger. They've been playing football for less time than the NFL players. It's like, I think the NFL players know what they're doing, and we don't have to call every hold. If we miss hold, because I see holds being missed all the time. So it's like, just cut it in half. That's all that we ask because we need the game to flow a little bit smoother. It just completely takes you out of it for a little bit, and you're like, there's another fucking yellow flag. And maybe it's a narcissism thing from the refs. It's just like, it's just really frustrating. It's like, these refs love being on TV. Like, be an actor.
Part of it, yes. I'm convinced that they are narcissists. If they weren't, they'd be doing it at a high school level, right?
Sure.
Maybe not. I mean, I'm sure money comes into play at that point too, but I think the biggest thing is, and this is the weirdest comparison I'll probably make all year, but it's the same thing with cops. Cops are going to do the job that they're taught to do, told to do, and judged on, right? Everybody wants to get so up in arms about, oh, well, this cop, handled this way too aggressively, i.e. Tyreek Hill. It's this at a very base level. It's the same thing with NFL referees. They're doing the job that they're being told to do because quote unquote player safety. And I am fully in the camp of, if you're a player, you don't have safety. Like, you're playing a sport for millions of dollars.
There's a warning sign
the luxury
on the helmet.
You don't get the luxury of being safe ever. Like, no one on earth has that luxury. But God forbid we make it into a profitable, economically boosting sport, game, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden we have to protect certain positions, or we have to, make it better for them. And it's like, all right, at what cost? Like you're now ruining the game of football, the game that I grew up loving, grew up watching, the Ray Lewis's, all the Ed Reeds, the
Brian
Brian
Dawkins.
Dawkins of the world no longer are capable of existing because of the way that the NFL is trying to prioritize player safety while at the exact same time putting defensive players at risk of injury.
Sure.
More than they ever have been. And the players that they're the most worried about, those are preventable wholeheartedly by what have we talked about? Offensive schemes. You don't throw a slant inside to Ray Lewis ever.
It's not okay.
That was just like, hey, this is the benefit of drafting and having this guy on your team and paying X million dollars per year. No longer is that a luxury. No longer is that an investment you're capable of making. It's all about offense now, and it probably will be for the foreseeable future until we move to the point where we're literally playing flag football professionally.
And it isn't translating that well because we had the least amount of passing touchdowns over the last 6 to 7 years this weekend, which I thought was fascinating. I think it was in 2018, they had 61 passing touchdowns on the weekend. And then this weekend we had a little bit over, I think 39 or 40 was the total number that we ended at. But let's get to a couple more of these games because
ruining this fucking sport. I'm watching with my own eyes.
One game that I found, just really fun across the board was, let's do the Sunday night game because the Lions and the Rams, I think these are two organizations and offenses that are doing it almost perfectly. I think Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell, they've been able to do this Lions offense. They won 26-20 in overtime against the Rams. Another offense that I just love watching, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp is officially back. These two teams, I would not be surprised to see them again in the divisional round this year. This is a playoff rematch that they had. Jared Goff, I think he's now 2-1 against McVay since their very, very public breakup. And Matt Stafford looked good. Goff looked good. Montgomery and Gibbs looked good. I wish that teams like this could just play every single week. Like, let's not fuck up the Sunday night football scheduling because I can't afford to have, Broncos Titans on a Sunday night. Let's make sure that every single week we're flexing in the best matchup possible because, Friday night was pretty fun between the Eagles and Packers. Monday night tonight was kind of boring between the Jets and Niners. But Rams-Lions, man, it was a blast. And Puka Nacua getting hurt sucked, but Cooper Kupp and Stafford, that connection is, it's up there. It's right behind Justin Fields and George Pickens.
Maybe in a few years.
A couple years, yeah. They need a little bit more time together.
Pickens is too much of a diva to stick around. We'll see how much longer he has in a Steelers uniform. He almost got his way out last year, but then they shipped Deontay off.
I just love George Pickens, and I think
who doesn't?
I can't remember who made the point. It might have been the guys on PMT. They were talking about how like Mike Tomlin, like he always seems to have divas on his roster, and everybody talks about how good he is at controlling divas. But it's like, if you're a dude and you're like, damn, I'm dating another toxic chick, maybe you're the problem. But hey, she's hot, so it's like you kind of let a lot of those things go. She stole your credit card to go to Macy's. It is what it is. You're still going to get some sick top from her a little bit later. That's kind of what George Pickens, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell have been for the Steelers. But yeah, the Rams and Lions, this is a strong marriage between their teams. Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. They're the couple that goes to Cheesecake Factory every single Sunday.
We've all seen Antonio Brown. I think Lev Bell just overplayed his hand. He was kind of the first running back to test the market ever. And be like, no, I'm worth this. No one had done that before him. And now you're kind of seeing it actually go in the opposite direction where owners are like, actually, I can just take undrafted free agent rookie running backs. We all agree that your position is worthless in comparison.
I think that tide is turning, though. I think that tide is turning just from the Saquon thing. There was a viral clip going around from the Hard Knocks in the offseason with the Giants. And the GM, Joe Shane, who I condemned on this podcast with Reesburg, I was like, this guy's an idiot. He's talking to John Mara, I believe is who it is, the owner of the team.
Yeah.
And he said, he's like, I'm going to have a hard time seeing Saquon in Eagles uniform. That's just going to be tough for me. And, Swift was solid for the Eagles. They've had, Kenneth Gainwell in the past, Miles Sanders. But when you put a generational running back there, you get 3 touchdowns in Brazil and you get 140 yards. So I think that running backs do still matter. I just think that they went so low for so long that it was like, oh, they don't matter anymore. And now the tide is kind of turning back where it's like McCaffrey makes a difference in San Francisco, even though Mason might have been able to dispute that argument tonight. I just think that tide is kind of versus like the Lions. It's like they do running back by committee. You know, they have Montgomery on the inside, Gibbs on the outside.
Right. And every single team does do that. You have to have a running back by committee. But the thing that, to your point, if you have an elite running back, you have an elite running back.
Yep.
Because there's less of them. There's less elite running backs probably than any other position. Like you could multiply the elite running backs by 10, and there's still less than any other position. Because Mixon is not an elite running back. He has never been. He never will be. He is good at times, great. He is beyond serviceable. Like the dude can ball, and you watch him do that when the game plan allows for it. But he's never going to be the guy that's like a Saquon or a Christian that can line up multiple positions on the field and is able to change the game in the way that both, you know, a Saquon or a McCaffrey are able to do. And
but he's just so much better than like Devin Singletary was last year, or Damian Pierce, where that Texans offense is just like, damn, when you have a shitty running back, it sucks. Like you cannot run the ball.
No. Like if you have a shit running back, then you have a shit team, right? Like you need at least one. You need at least one guy that's able to break out and make a play in between the tackles. If you can have another guy that's able to bounce it outside, kind of like the Lions have between a Montgomery and a Gibbs, because those two together, like whenever you watch Gibbs take it inside now, and they were even commenting this, I think it was Collinsworth that was bringing it up on Sunday night. He's like, this isn't something that Gibbs was doing at all last year. Like Gibbs didn't know how to run between the tackles and follow his blocks. And he did it flawlessly, which in my mind makes so much sense now why they had David Montgomery dominating the snap count last year. I was like, oh, like I didn't even think about that. I didn't realize that was even a problem. And it's also the same thing when you think back to a Lev Bell. It's borderline porn watching Steelers like 2015 highlights where he would just sit. Like you see the Wake Forest like walk RPO. Where they literally will take 10 seconds before deciding to hand it off or run the ball or not. Like it was basically that, but it was a guaranteed run play. Like the ball was already in his hands and he was just like, all right, which hole do I hit? We'll wait and see.
There was no PO. It was just R and it was just delayed. It was just like,
it was just
what is he doing back there? Like he does not have this much time. He's like, no, he's going to make the time. And that's a great like credit to the offensive line and stuff like that. Cause the Lions have one of the best offensive lines.
And they weren't that good with the Steelers. Like I remember we had like Alejandro Villanueva was like our left tackle. Like the main guy of that offensive line who is supposed to be your left tackle was by far the worst. And maybe that's why it worked so well. It sucked in pass coverage, but I mean, you get behind Marquise Pouncey and anything could happen. I think that moving that back into this Lions Rams game, I think we are just beginning to see what is possible for the Lions. It literally is all on Goff. It is 100% entirely on, is Jared Goff capable of doing what his predecessor and apprentice, Matt Stafford, did in LA? Because the running backs are there. The offensive line is more than there. Jameson Williams introduced himself to the world again.
Fuck yeah, he did.
As if he didn't do that at Bama already, and people were just like, "Oh, he's a bust." Like, no, actually, he's been injured since he got into the league. But look at him now.
And he was listening to Rent Money. That got him some trouble too.
Yeah, he shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But on top of all of that, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have Laporta, you have playmakers all over the field. Marvin Jones is probably going to be back on that team at some point with the next 5 years. Like, I mean, that dude will die a Lion. And you have an entire city who has nothing else to be excited about. The Pistons, God bless. The Detroit Tigers, they're just happy that the White Sox exist right now. And the Red Wings have to wait at least another month and a half.
And
Until
Michigan
we
just got
know
their shit kicked in by Texas. So
and
it's like,
Michigan's ass again. So
well,
when it comes to football, when it comes to fall, this is all the city has. They're all in. And I think when you have that in these and I'm not going to call Detroit a mid-market team, but honestly, they have been.
yeah.
Like Detroit has been a mid-market city, like professionally for a while now, which is depressing, but they're on the up and up hard.
Well, I think
right
one of the
now.
most impressive things about this game is they won it without Amon-Ra being generational. 3 catches, 13 yards. They didn't
He was
depend on
non-existent,
him.
and
Like,
neither was Laporta.
but like
Laporta was
last year, that
hardly
was an
active.
issue for them. It's like it was just Laporta and Amon-Ra. And now you have the third receiver in Jamison who threatens an entirely different scope of the defense. Like last year, it was mostly like the furthest pass that you would see to a Laporta or St. Brown was like 40 yards. And now you can get that anytime that you want with Jamison. I mean, even like Khalif Raymond is solid. And then the defense looked good too. And, Campbell's
The
out there.
defense, yeah.
Anzalone is solid. They go get
I was gonna
Carlton
say-
Davis from Tampa, and he's making good stops. Like,
Dude.
it's just a lot more fun to watch now that they're not going to let up fucking 40 points. Like, they don't need to be a shootout every time. And that's what a good team does. They notified where their weak points were, and they just clarified them. That's really all they did. Like, they might not have like the most names on the defensive side of the ball, but the scheme that Aaron Glenn is running, I like. Aiden Hutchinson's going to continue to get better. He got himself a sack to end the game, or I think to end the fourth quarter. Yeah, he had that sack to send it to overtime, essentially. I really like them. I mean, if like we were going to do power rankings, I think they would be number 2, number 3, number 4 in that realm. They'd be behind the Chiefs and the Niners, and that's about it.
I got them. I think I got them at number 4 right now. Only because I think the Baltimore Ravens are at 3, even though they lost to the best team in football. All of that to be said, Alex Anzalone might be like my wet dream of a middle linebacker.
He's Brian Cushing, like fully realized, playing for a longer amount of time. He's like if Brian Cushing and Andrew Van Ginkel had a kid, and he played like on the Bounty Saints, and he just went to play for Dan Campbell.
He's like Clay Matthews' little brother. The hair, like everything, like he just has a nose for the ball, and he's gonna run at it 100 miles an hour. Like he's so fucking good that you almost forget that they have a second year 6'5" middle linebacker right behind him that runs like a 4.5, and you're like, sounds good. But the additions at secondary, I think the secondary will take a little more time to
Arnold,
play as a
Davis.
true unit.
Yep.
Like Arnold, you can tell, like Brian Branch stepping in last year, I think having him wear the green dot was one of the best decisions that a coaching staff has probably ever made ever.
And just so listeners know, the green dot,
him.
when you put it on a helmet, that's the guy who's getting the communication from the coach. And they usually do that with middle linebackers. Like
typically,
if you see Fred Warner, he's going to be the one who has the green dot. Roquan Smith. But the Lions gave it to Brian Branch, who was a rookie safety last year.
And it's the green dot. It's the quarterback of your defense.
Yep,
is what it is. Normally, like you said, it's a middle linebacker. It's a guy that's kind of commanding everything, that sees everything. For them to give it to a rookie safety, but then on top of all of that, for him to develop the way that he did, if he can kind of assess and guide a Terrion Arnold, that was Terrion's first NFL game, so you're not like. You can't really be too high or too down on a guy that's never taken a snap in the league before. It's just a different world entirely. But I think the biggest thing was that the Lions made an absolute mockery of what was once known as one of the greatest corners in the NFL in Tre'Davious White. And because of their ability to capitalize on that, the Rams offense suffered not because of their defense, but because of their lack of depth at the offensive line, more specifically offensive tackle position, which in my mind, if I am a Rams fan, this loss is blamed on the general manager. Week 1 of the NFL and having a third string tackle playing is despicable. Like you have to be more prepared for this, but on top of all of that, the ability for the Rams to plan around that and still come back and take this game to overtime, I thought you're not even close to seeing the best of that team. And I thought that the Lions hopefully learned a lesson when it comes to taking your foot off the gas of they took their foot off of the throat of their opponent for a second.
Yeah, they played not to lose for a little bit rather than playing to win.
And as soon as they did that, as soon as their game plan switched up, it became a game. It should have been put away midway through the third, but they let it go to overtime. And that's hopefully something that they live from. But keep in mind that this is only their second year of being a good team.
This is their first year of being hunted versus the hunter, though, which is going to be interesting because last year, if you go into this game, like the Rams have to be the favorites last year if they play week 1, right? And now the Lions are coming into the season. It's like, all right, we're the favorites. We're at home. A lot of people are picking us to come out of the NFC. We're going against a Rams team. It's going to be their first game in 10 years without the best defensive player on the defensive line ever. Like Aaron Donald's sitting at home watching this game. We don't have to worry about him. But, they got new guys coming in. Like I like Durant a lot. I love Jared Verse. Fisk was solid in this game.
Yeah,
Verse is a baller.
Together, and you're seeing you're seeing a lot of those two being gone at Florida State right now too.
Yep.
They look totally different, but
I think the Lions, one of their biggest weaknesses last year was, not just their defense as a whole, but their run defense. It sucked. And Kyron Williams was a baller last year, and he had 18 carries on Sunday night for 50 yards, and that's a huge win for the Lions to be able to restrain a guy like that, because you're going to play some good running backs in the NFC when we get to playoff time. You're going to run into a McCaffrey, a Jacobs, a Saquon, and that's going to be like you're preparing for those moments. So it's exciting to see that. And they're going to play the Niners at some point this year in the regular season, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Just see what week they play, because that's going to be a fucking awesome game.
And while you're talking about that, too, I will say Kyron Williams is pretty much the breed of what you're going to see is Jalen Warren being another guy. These are the guys that are not necessarily, your workhorses, your 3 down backs. These are the guys that are going to step up and do the dirty work. They love picking up a linebacker blitzing. Yep. They love being able to take a swing pass that should be worth 2 yards and turning it into 13. That's what they get off on. And so for the Lions to be able to keep Kyron to that and not let him do what he was weirdly capable of doing a lot last year, which was break off huge rushing games, that is the way that you need to play that specific running back, that specific offense at the time. And granted, that still might be too much for what the Rams offensive line was on Sunday night. In my mind, Matt Stafford stock is going way up. His ability to keep them in that game and to make plays and to do it even on drives where they had no shot. If he has a decent offensive line, I don't know if the Lions win that game.
I just think there are so many quarterbacks that we watch this weekend, and it's damn, this position looks really fucking hard to play. Or at least they make it look really hard to play. And he's kind of the last of a dying breed from that era of Breeze, Roethlisberger, Rivers, Rodgers, Brady, Manning.
Gunslinger.
And he just gets out there, and it's damn, he makes this shit look easy. He's dissecting. Like you said, they're missing – they have a third string left tackle out there. That's why they were getting rid of the ball so damn quick. And you can't do that if you have a rookie quarterback back there, or if you have anybody not named Matt Stafford back there. There's only a select few guys that can do that. But let's rattle through.
Not one.
No, he's not. He needs he's kind of more point and shoot, like a Tua might be.
But you know who is? You know who could step in and do well? Joe Flacco. He proved it last year.
Sure, yeah, Flacco can do it too. Last of a dying breed.
For what fucking reason? No one knows. But
all right, let's rattle through a few more of these games. Bills beat the Cardinals. Cardinals actually cover +6.5, 34-28. Kyler looked fun. It was nice to have him back. He looked so small. I always forget just how little he is running around out there, but he just does the sneaky little shit stuff, where he's running on the sideline. He just sticks the ball out for an extra yard. It's literally like watching a video game. And then on the other side of the ball, Josh Allen, totally different video game, but just as fun. It's like playing NFL Street with Josh Allen versus actually no, that would be Kyler. What was that one game? It was like Smash Mouth football or something like that we had growing up, where like if you would get tackled at the wrong
NFL
place.
Street,
No, there was like it was like an even more intense version of that. It was like a rated M football
NFL
game.
Blitz.
I think it was Blitz maybe, but like if you got
It
tackled,
was like the slugfest.
you would
Of,
literally see like a spleen bursting.
Yeah.
Like the camera would like zoom in on it, and it would just get somebody cracking their ribs. And it was so
Shout
nasty.
out to Jake Sheednell. Jake Sheednell at that game, and I used to play that and 007 on the GameCube at his house all the time, and I was always just like, I can't play this game, man. I was like, this
NFL Blitz. Yeah, this shit was intense.
I was like, I'm more of a, try to run up the wall in NFL Street 2 type of guy. But
that's Kyler. Like Kyler's just like, all right, you have a game breaker with him. He erupts in the first half. He looks awesome. James Conner looks good. I'm gonna like watching the Cardinals offense this year, and they've been really boring in the past. And then the Bills offense is just Josh Allen and a bunch of dudes, and he looks really impressive. I would love to see him just have an MVP season.
I didn't like this game for either team, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I thought that if you're Buffalo, like, it was a lose-lose game for you no matter what. So for you to start as slow as you did and barely win, like, I'm not that impressed. I get that you're losing Diggs, but like you should have done better in my mind. Like, if Keon Coleman isn't the guy, or if you're not going to make Dalton Kincaid one of the top tight ends in the NFL, then this is entirely on you when it comes to having close games against mid teams, because Arizona is a mid team. And they proved that mainly through, once again, Kyler not being able to go through reads or his progressions and just kind of relying on his ability to scramble. And it works. Don't get me wrong. You get a first down. You get a few extra yards here and there, but he misses wide open throws. Namely, there was one with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Grant. I want Marvin to be good so bad. I don't know if there's a worse scenario for him in the NFL than the Arizona Cardinals based on what we saw week one. And it was entirely because the very last drive of the game, Harrison is wide open on a touchdown, would-be touchdown, I should say. Kyler never even sees him. Like, this is the fourth pick of the draft?
Yep.
Yeah, fourth pick of the draft, generational talent at wide receiver until next year. We're going to see disgustingly good wide receivers at the rookie position in the NFL for probably upwards of the next 8 to 12 years. Just be warned of that in advance.
Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, these guys come in day one and just ball out. And yeah, Marvin had less catches in this game than Elijah Higgins.
He had one catch. He had one catch for 4 yards.
Yep.
And he dropped another one. I don't know if he had more. I believe he had 2 targets the entire game. That cannot be a trend, I would hope, unless they just are using him as a decoy for the foreseeable future. You have to find a way to get this guy more involved, is my only real thought looking at that entire game. Honestly, same with Keon Coleman. Like, I know, didn't he have a touchdown?
He didn't. He had 4 catches for 51 yards. Shakir had a touchdown, and Matt Collins had a touchdown. And then Josh ran for 2.
I want to see over because I wasn't expecting it week one. Same thing with Cincinnati's offense. I don't want to talk about that game at all because Jesus Christ, that was such a gross game. Props to Jared Mayo.
My Bengals under looks so good though. It looks so good. Yeah, they look terrible.
Bengals,
but they always
the Bengals are going to be
one.
ass. Bengals are going to be ass this year once again. Until Joe Burrow proves me wrong, they're gunning for third. It's them in Cleveland every year, somehow shitting the bed. But I really do want to see by midway through this year, Keon be the guy in Buffalo. Like, you drafted him for a reason, and he's proven himself not only at a dog shit Michigan State team, but then going to Florida State and kind of earning wide receiver 1 targets and reps and et cetera.
Baller.
Like, make him the guy and make him prove it to you. Like, throw him the targets, give him the targets, and make him go and make the play, because he will. Like, he is not, and I don't want to get this, he's not Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's right behind him, like, as the second best wide receiver in this class.
Similar frame, similar kind of like
they're big-bodied
speed.
motherfuckers that can play physically and get out. But then if they have the ball in space, they're going to do something with that too. It's what everyone was so excited about Chase Claypool for being this 6'4" wide receiver that can move. They're like, oh, Calvin Johnson. The guy was terrified of contact. Like, you saw it every time he went on a route. He was going for a pass interference damn near every single time that he went downfield. I want to see these guys go out and just be fucking sharks as wide receivers and just make plays and embarrass cornerbacks. Like, if that's the way the NFL wants to move, then that's what I want to see as a fan.
And if you're a Buffalo fan, that's the number one thing you want to see is you want to see Keon become that, because I mean, it's week 1 and Josh had to do a lot. Like, he had to have a superhuman effort, literally diving into the end zone Elway style, just helicoptering for touchdowns. And it's like, that's not really what you want your $60 million quarterback to have to do in order to beat Arizona at home week 1. Because you're right, they are going to be a middle of the pack team, and Buffalo is going to be expected to beat those teams because they're going to be a top tier team. At least they should be. And it's all because of him. All right, a couple more games. Let's talk Harbaugh.
Say this before you do. Buffalo regresses hard this year.
Yep, I agree.
Let's talk which Harbaugh. I'm assuming the Chargers.
Yeah, let's talk Jim. All right. There's a hilarious video of him and Justin Herbert. I think it's like right after the national anthem. Posted it to the Pop Off Pot Instagram page. If you're not following, go check it out. But he just like looks at
beer
Herbert
while you break this down,
and he just smacks his shoulder pads around. And Justin's like expecting like the casual hug, the let's go get him champ, that kind of like pregame pep talk that every coach has with their quarterback before these games. And I think Herbert's just going to have to get used to not having Brandon Staley as his head coach or Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator. It's like Harbaugh's a different beast, but Herbert wasn't even the story of this game. I mean, he played fine. He played solid. He had just a below average Justin Herbert game. He ended up throwing for about 144 yards, which could be his high this season, could be his low. We don't exactly know. But J.K. Dobbins, 10 carries, 135 yards, earned the reps to become their RB1 down the stretch. Gus Edwards went 11 carries for 26 yards. J.K. was not the bell cow necessarily because he didn't get a lion's share of the carries, but he looked really good while he was out there. It's nice to see J.K. Dobbins playing football at a high level because he's been a guy that's been plagued by injury throughout his career, has all of the tools to be a really solid running back in this league. He's built like one. He's kind of got like that Ray Rice, like little guy, angry model of running. And I just like seeing him in a Harbaugh offense. And then one last point was I saw some tape of Joe Alt, who's your guy from Notre Dame. All of his reps against Max Crosby in this game, the tape dropped today on Twitter. He dominated the matchup. Like, this is a rookie tackle going against one of the best edge rushers in the league. I love Max Crosby. I think he's a stud. I think he dominates 31 other starting tackles in this game, especially 31 other rookie tackles in this game. But Alt held his own, and he looked like a fucking all-pro tackle his first game. So Harbaugh's got it made, man. He's got Herbert, he's got Slater, he's got Alt, and he's just going to build around those dudes. And then Khalil Mack showed up. Derwin James was out there. I like the Chargers. I mean, if there's anybody that's going to turn this franchise around, it's going to be him. And the honeymoon between Herbert and Harbaugh has begun. 22-10 over the Vegas Raiders.
And I agree 100% because of exactly what you just said. This is a Chargers team that prioritized defense, and they prioritized running the ball for the first time in how many years? Like, how many years has it been since
like
we're
LT,
like
Mike Tolbert?
I mean, like, for the record, just to quickly touch on Joe Alt, this is a guy that was a tight end prospect coming out of high school, and Notre Dame was like, yeah, by the way, you know that you're 6'8", why don't you go ahead and just put on some LBs and, take the footwork and the hands that you have and just turn that into something special at tackle. He does. And you're seeing that now. Like, there's a guy from Notre Dame that will be in this exact same position. His name is Charles Jagosa. He is injured, unfortunately. He got hurt in preseason. He would have been a sophomore this year, but you'll see him next year and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, Notre Dame, I would say every 2 to 3 years churns out this level of offensive tackle, occasionally guard, occasionally center. And when they get to the NFL, everyone's like, oh yeah, we knew that. Like Zach Martin kind of being like another example. Ronnie Stanley, another one. Like, you're going to just see these guys at the NFL level and be like, oh yeah, like they were literally coached to do this. There's 49 Notre Dame alumni playing actively right now in the NFL. A lot of them are either offensive line or front seven on defense the last couple of years, thanks to Al Golden. So be on the lookout for those guys. But specifically, I think Justin Herbert needs to shut the fuck up and play football.
He's not like the loudest guy in the world. He just likes to take some sponsorship money from Subway and SoFi. That's all.
And he's not. But like everyone talks for him, and I really need him to go out of his way to tell everyone else to shut the fuck up in order for him to just be a grown man and do his job.
I don't think there's anything wrong with just like not responding to like because he has all these football nerds that fucking love him and like would die on a sword, and I'm one of them. I love Herbert. But like, my favorite thing about him this weekend is he takes Lad McConkey and he's like, rookie wide receiver from Georgia, white boy. You're going to get the most targets this weekend. Like, that's fucking awesome. Like, he's buying into the system. It's not his fault.
And I'm not trying to say that
you want Justin Herbert to shut the fuck up.
No, I want Justin Herbert to become QB1 in the NFL because he came into the league. And Joey, if you're listening, Joey, my brother, and I have both said this on record several times that Justin Herbert has been the most pro-ready quarterback we have seen come out of college probably in the last decade. I don't know if you could name another quarterback that was more ready for an NFL defense than Justin Herbert, other than maybe Patrick Mahomes. And that, once again, is back to a scheme thing. Herbert has never had a scheme. He's never had great O-line. Like, you're now about to see him with you just said that was Joe Alt's first game in the NFL. Who does he have? Max Crosby. And what does he do? He dominates the matchup. Like, as soon as they drafted him, you saw the clips of him as like in his living room. Dude's wearing like bird dogs and a Lululemon quarter zip, no drip at all. Like no swagger. This is a guy that was born to just be like a 6-time All-Pro NFL tackle and then retire and maybe have a podcast, right?
Probably
maybe,
not, though.
if he wants to, but he probably won't. But he could, because he's a Notre Dame man and he has the intellect to do so. But honestly, I think what you saw in this game, game one, way less to do with Herbert, way less to do with anyone on the field, and everything to do with the fact that you have Jim Harbaugh as your coach. The guy knows how to win. Like, he's proven that at every level. He's gotten a fucking Colin Kaepernick-led 49ers team to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And if you thought for a second that he was going to take on a divisional opponent, more specifically the Raiders, bringing Gardner Minshew out onto the field week one. And I love Gardner too. Don't get me wrong. That's a Mike Leach prodigy if we've ever seen one. The biggest loss or the biggest loser in this game is no one other than Antonio Pierce. You talk so much shit all offseason about how we're tough, we're this, we're that, we're the Raiders, we're tough-minded, we're strong, we're gritty, and then you punt the ball on 4th and fucking 1 on the other team's 43-yard line while you're down 6, 7 minutes left in the game. Every single rule book, I don't care if you're an analytics guy or if you're, like I listen to God and I'm a vibes guy. Me personally, I lean towards let's ask God what he wants us to do here. But even still, if you're an analytics guy, everything said you go for 4th and 1. And they punted the ball and lost the game because of it. And, buddy, they got the Ravens on the road next week at noon, coming off of a Thursday night game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Good luck.
You're
going to have to wait until the
Raiders. That's
I was going to say, you're going to have to wait until the 15th when you go to Carolina to play the Panthers to see your first win of the season. There's no way that they win next week.
The Surrender Index is a great follow on Twitter. They said that Las Vegas decided to punt from the 43 of the Chargers on 4th and 1 with 7 minutes and 15 seconds remaining. The Surrender Index reaches 131.72. It ranks at the 100th percentile of cowardly punts of the 2024 season and the 99.9th percentile of all punts since 1999. I agree. I like Antonio Pierce as a coach. I just think it was, I don't know, just a stupid decision week 1. I think he bounces back. I'm always for the former players as coaches. I like his swagger. I just think at the same time, it's like, I don't know, man. It's pretty fucking weak, dude. Like, you got White back there. He's like done a pretty good job carrying the ball all day. I mean, if you want to throw a pass play, you got Devontae Adams out there. He's always going to win his one-on-one matchups. Even if it is, I like Asante Samuel Jr. a lot. I think Devontae beats him in a one-on-one there. I mean, you're not going to get the ball back. They're just going to run it down your throat, and that's what happened. JK broke a long run. They punched it in. Game's a wrap.
There is a lot of teams in the NFL that could do a 4th and 1 punt from their opponent's 43 down 6 with just over 7 minutes remaining. I can tell you for a fact that if you are in either the AFC North or if you are a brand trying to pretend like you're as gritty as the Raiders have been historically as a franchise, and even though you're in Vegas now, you're still maintaining that, that is probably the one time you're not allowed to go punt the ball. Like, if you were trying to tell me that you're going to bring back grit and toughness and make that a cornerstone selling point of this franchise, do the bare minimum and prove it to me by just making even if you don't convert that, you're the coach that determines whether or not that is capable of existing. And he completely shot it down on the first week of the first game of the year for this team. And they're walking out a team that really doesn't have a quarterback. They really don't have a running back. And they're kind of just hoping for the best. This is a Raiders team that could play really well. I think I'm higher on Gardner Minshew than a lot of people. He's a guy that can win you a football game when it has to happen. He's kind of like, in my mind, Gardner will be this year's Josh Dobbs, except he's got the job day one. Like, he can do it. But when your running back is Zamir White, that's the guy you have to get fired up. That's the guy you have to get going. And to have the perfect opportunity, like a 4th and 1, and not give it to him, I think is more detrimental to all of the offense.
Yes, the whole team's
than
confidence.
It is to anything else. Because now your defense is
them.
like, your offense is like, oh, you didn't trust us to get it. Your defense is like, you trusted us to stop them and we didn't.
Yep.
And your special teams is like, yeah, we're not capable of going out and trying to hit, a 68-yard field goal, whatever that would have been. Like, no one, and granted, Carlson missed one or two kicks, but like, Carlson's got a fucking leg on him.
Yeah.
Like,
give him another shot. And you know what? It's a classic case of we both took high school English. Show, don't tell, man. Don't tell me that you're ballsy. Show me that you're ballsy. And it wouldn't have been ballsy according to the surrender index. All right, a couple more games before we get out of here. Let's just quickly touch on I have a comment. Fox has what they call America's Game every week at 3:25. And now Tom Brady is the announcer for America's Game. He's replaced Greg Olson. Why is it America's Game if we don't get a vote on it? Okay, they just always put the Cowboys in that slot. They played the Browns. It was 33-17. I guarantee if you put a poll out there for all of the Americans, you bring the census to our door, and it's like we're voting on the game of the week this week, Cowboys-Browns isn't going to be it, all right? It probably would have been fucking Chiefs-Ravens. So it's like, why are we labeling it the game of the week? I guess Fox has a trademark on that. It's stupid. Cowboys looked really good. Dak looked really good. He just got paid Sunday morning, like 4 hours before the game kicked off. $260 million quarterback now, I believe, maybe a little bit more or less than that. The Browns look like shit. Deshaun Watson sucks, and he's in more legal trouble.
I'll let you touch on the legal trouble here in a second, but
Thanks.
In my mind, this game showed absolutely nothing to me about either team. We knew that the Cowboys had a good offense.
Yep.
We knew that the Browns, without Nick Chubb, have a terrible offense. Can't really make a judgment on their defense because they were on the field the entire game. Like, I don't know if you know this or not, but whether your offense is able to stay on the field and score, that has a massive impact on your defense. And so the Cleveland Browns, I am far from overreacting on, especially as a Steelers fan, knowing their capabilities to play physical, tough, run it down your throat football when Chubb is healthy and active. Like, come late October, early November, if Chubb is back, this will look like a completely different team. And none of that will be impacted by whether Deshaun Watson is playing or not, because he has been terrible, like absolute ass, since he came back to the league from his first round of sexual assault cases. Now he's got another one fresh off the block today. In my mind, somebody in the Browns front office made this happen that had it silenced before, because they were like, damn, this is, our best way out of this. And in my mind, that's probably the best call. Deshaun Watson might be one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. He can't.
He 100% is. The fall off is so dramatic. Like, he can't make easy checkdowns. 24 for 45 in this game. And I like the Cowboys defense. I think they're solid. But I mean, it's embarrassing.
They're all right.
Like,
they're all right. Like, let's not get too excited. Like, the Cowboys defense has Micah Parsons.
Yeah, which is automatically going to raise your floor and your ceiling.
Correct.
I think Diggs is solid. I think Overshown's going to be a fucking stud. I get it. I know. Diggs is a gambler, but I think Overshown's a stud. I don't mind Bland either.
Well, if Overshown can prove himself, this defense will be scary, because we all know what the Cowboys defense used to be able to look like when they had DeMarcus Ware on the outside, and then insert whoever the guy was. I'm thinking Sean Lee being kind of like the standalone, like patrol the middle, like run the defense guy.
And they got Eric Kendricks there now too. He's a savvy vet.
And he's a perfect mentor for Overshown.
Sure, 100%.
Overshown is one of the freakiest athletic middle linebackers you're going to see, honestly, in football until next year. Like, you're just going to keep getting these guys injected because of the draft. Like, Smale Munden is a guy that I would kind of look at next year.
Great name. Smale Munden?
Out of Georgia. Keep an eye on him. He's going to be scary.
I'm going to. I'm not going to be able to help myself with that name.
Yeah, he is heavily underrated, even though he goes to Georgia, and he's started last year as well. But when it comes, dude, honestly, I was more impressed by Mike Zimmer than I thought I would be as the first game as a defensive play caller for the Cowboys. The guy actually got it right. There was a chance I thought that he had lost his touch, or it wasn't where it needed to be. There would be a step down from Dan Quinn, and the Cowboys did good. Like, they didn't do great. I thought they did good. The Browns just aren't good on offense when you don't have probably the best running back in football as a pure runner.
Sure.
I think we can give Nick Chubb the nod as the best pure runner of a football. I mean, Derrick Henry was a year, maybe 2 years ago, but he's just not anymore. Like, he never will be again. And a lot of that is because his quarterback is probably a better runner than he is now. But
yeah, Chubb is bite-sized Henry now. And it's like, when he's available, it's like he's the platonic ideal of what a running back looks like. It's
that is what a running back should be.
Just
is
fucking
Nick Chubb.
Stiff arm, inside the tackle, outside the tackle, doesn't matter. Right. You give him a hole, he's going to exploit it. He's going to make guys miss, but more importantly, he's going to go through motherfuckers. He's impossible to break down. And now you're bringing in Jerome Ford. And I started Jerome Ford in a fantasy league this week because I'm like, oh, he's behind the Browns offensive line. They've been pretty good in the past. They don't look nearly as good anymore. and they've lost complete confidence in Deshaun. I think it was Joel Bitonio, maybe, their left guard, who fell to the ground. Deshaun walked over to him, offered his hand out to help him up from the ground, and he just waved him off. And it's like, oh, shit, dude. Like, your quarterback's supposed to be the leader of your team. And if your offensive line is literally shooing him away when he's offering to help them up, it's like you're fucked. And it might be Jameis time, man. Like, bring in Jameis. That's a guy that can group a locker room together.
It's three things. One, that apparently your offensive line doesn't care for your quarterback that much. Two, your quarterback costs $230 million guaranteed over 5 years.
Yep.
To be that. But then also three, you play in the city of Cleveland, which is probably, and it's not even like an exaggeration. I would say Cleveland is the worst. It is the worst city in all of professional sports, maybe all of America. You live in a city that is the color gray, surrounded by gray people with gray faces, with gray culture, with gray food, with gray music and gray nightlife. Like, how can you expect anyone in the city, let alone the team, to feel any form of joy? The city feels joy when the Browns or the Cavs do well.
Yeah, just another mark at how LeBron's the GOAT is he made Cleveland cool.
They're like, oh yeah, like, but Ohio State. I'm like, no. That's a college team in a completely different city.
Columbus.
And you still live in a shithole. Like, no one's excited to live in Cleveland, Ohio.
No.
It is.
My brother lived there for 3 months on an internship, and I think he had to get prescribed Lexapro afterwards. He was like, this is just absolutely brutal.
The reason that antidepressants exist is because of cities like Cleveland, Ohio. And I want that on record. I want this clipped. I want you to bookmark this right now. If you are from Cleveland and you haven't killed yourself yet, I owe you money. And so does the government, honestly.
I think LeBron's doing okay.
No, LeBron's from the outskirts.
Akron.
He's an Akron boy. Akron's different. They got the Zips, right? They have something to watch fall apart in the MAC. But, like, dude, like, Cincinnati's right there, you know? Like, at least
make the trip for some Skyline chili.
I know you guys came here from Baltimore. We wish you wouldn't have, because now our lives are shit. We could have just been all in on the Cavs and forced the Cavs ownership to do something, but now we're balanced, because ever since the Cavs fell off, i.e. LeBron left again, it's kind of just been all in on the Browns. And it's like, and we haven't even touched on this, and maybe this is your next game, but like, if Baker stays in Cleveland, holy fucking shit, do they look so different, because Jesus Christ, Baker looked incredible.
Is there a locker room that gets behind a quarterback more than one with Baker Mayfield inside of it? Is there a guy who is, I mean, just a crazy story for his career? Like, he gets completely disbanded by the Browns for one bad season with the Browns. Like, it wasn't great, and he had been hurt too, and he played through injuries with them. And they abandoned him for the opportunity to go get a guy that had all of these cases against him. And ever since then, Deshaun has only gone down and Baker has only gone up. I mean, the guy spent like 4 weeks under McVay, and he comes back and he takes Tampa to the playoffs last year. And like, balls out this weekend against the Commanders, 37-20. Looked like one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks of the weekend, too. It's like every time Tampa Bay showed up on Red Zone, it's like, oh, shit, Baker's dropping another dime. Fucking 24 of 30, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, 30 passes, 24 completions.
Go watch the tape. I watched so much of this game because I'm very big on making sure that Mike Evans finds his way into the Hall of Fame. And he will. For the casuals at home, I'm going to go on record in saying that there is a very solid chance that Baker Mayfield is better than your team's starting quarterback. Like, Baker is top 12 in the NFL, and he proved it on Sunday, because that wasn't just like fuck it. Like, we'll go out there and we'll maybe get a win. Like, we'll maybe play decent. Like, we were watching it was a good matchup. It wasn't like the defense was terrible.
They're not terrible, but they're definitely not good. But it's like he doesn't have to prove anything to us right now because he actually played well against good defenses last year. Like the defenses that he faced in the playoffs, like Detroit or Philly, like those aren't terrible defenses. They have talent on that side of the ball.
The Commanders have been a defense-first team for years.
And
right?
the defensive coach now. Dan Quinn's their head coach. That's defensive mastermind.
On top of it, correct. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is a blend of, Bulls in Tampa having better scheme, right? This, once again, like, you have, anytime an NFL team wins, it is either explicitly because one guy plays out of his ass, typically a quarterback, or it's because the other team just straight up had a better game plan. And I think a lot of it in this game was Bulls and the Bucks having a better game plan than Quinn in his first game. And
Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback, which is tough.
But Jaden still looked good.
I agree.
Jaden didn't look
totally
bad.
Agree. But like
he's
the Bucks are also going to be
class.
They're going to be outmatched. They're going to be able to outmatch a lot of corners with Mike Evans and Godwin. Like people always forget that Godwin, when healthy, is just like a really, really good receiver. Like he's still solid.
Like,
and then they get McMillan from Washington, right? Like that kid, one catch, one touchdown. So they've got weapons, and Rachaad White looked solid too, out of the backfield, catching passes. And then the defense, it's like, they still have, Levante David, Antoine Winfield. They still got some ballers on that side of the ball.
I think the Bucks are the epitome of what if we said fuck it and went all in at wide receiver and offensive line. Like they're the epitome of that in the NFL. Like you have studs across the O-line, Wirfs kind of being the guy, but like you have two wide receivers that you put them on just about any other team. I would say you put them on 25, 26 of the other teams in the NFL, they're wide receiver one, either of them. And then they show up, play together, play as a unit, and neither of them have come out and been divas, which is, as a Steelers fan, insanity. But as an NFL fan, incredible. It is so fucking heartwarming to look at a team like the Tampa Bay Bucks, see the talent across the offense, see the amount of mouths that have to be fed or should be fed, and see zero complaints. I don't know how the fuck they do it, except for the fact that they live in Tampa. It's like, why would I want to leave here? This place is incredible. And
it's not Cleveland.
That, it sure as fuck isn't Cleveland. But other than that, I'm like, how in the hell do they do it? I'll never know. But especially because they went from really think about the path that the Bucks have had at the quarterback position over the last decade.
Tom.
Just think, even before that, it was Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
To Jameis.
Yep.
To Tom. To Baker.
Yeah. All right.
And it's worked out.
Before we get out of here, I have a top 10 power rankings that we're going to be doing all year. And we are going to monitor it to see if anybody can knock off the Chiefs at 1. Shocker, they probably won't. We'll count it down 10-1. You let me know where I'm wrong, where you have any disagreements. But this is my list, and we'll keep track of it just to see where people stack up at the end of the season and see if that has any kind of forecasting on decisions for playoff bets. At number 10, I do have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it's just because they impressed the shit out of me. I like both sides of the ball. I like the skill position. And like you said, if Baker's going to play like this, top 12, top 10 quarterback play.
They'll be higher if he continues to play like that.
At number 9, I have the Buffalo Bills. Like you said, I think there's some regression here as well. But I just believe in Josh Allen. I think anytime you have Josh Allen at quarterback, it's kind of like Luka with the Mavericks. Like you shouldn't lose, more than 6 to 7 games. You should be able to get a double-digit wins every year.
If he's off, you lose every game.
Yep, he has to play perfect. Number 8, I have the Rams, Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay. 0-1, but I have enough confidence in that system, those guys, those white dudes in LA. I have them at number 8.
With Puka out?
Sure,
I might
put
move
Puka
them
out.
to 9,
I like
but
Tyler Johnson, and I think Cup
I
can
do too. But
carry
also,
it.
until we see the O-line fully healthy, I don't think you can put them in the top 10 yet.
Fair.
But they should be a top 10 team.
Number 7, I have the Houston Texans.
Higher. I don't know who's above them, but it should be higher.
Well, here are the teams that are above them. At number 6, I have the Dallas Cowboys.
Nope.
That's just branding. Okay. Number 5, I have the Philadelphia Eagles.
Nope.
Number 4, I have the Detroit Lions.
Yep.
Number 3, I have the Baltimore Ravens.
Yep.
Number 2, I have the Niners.
Yep.
And number 1, I have the Chiefs.
I think if you move the Texans to where the Eagles are, move everything else back, that's probably, in my mind, where it should be. I think the Texans looked bad and still put up almost 30 points against a good Colts team. I thought the Rams shot themselves, and it's, for the record, it is their GM's fault. I said that earlier. I'll say it again. If you're an NFL GM and your team is susceptible, not like outright starting your third string, but if you're susceptible to starting a third string, sign anybody on the fucking free agency market that has had experience and is capable of holding their own for your veteran quarterback. A veteran quarterback. It's not like this is a rookie. This is one of the longest tenured guys in the NFL at his position.
Crazy injury history too.
Crazy injury history. Get anyone, literally anybody, who can hold it down on a 1-year deal, and that game goes completely different. That's just first and foremost. Second of all, though, I really do think that the 49ers on paper are better than the Kansas City Chiefs. It is literally just because of the fact that the
one team is Patrick Mahomes and the other one doesn't.
The next to be, he will be the greatest quarterback of all time in Patrick Mahomes. But a lot of that, like, no one talks about the Chiefs defense enough for how fucking much I hate their defense. They get the job done week in, week out, and they give Mahomes a chance to win any and every game.
Yep.
Whether you're playing a Baltimore Ravens team with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, or you're going to turn around and you're going to play Herbert, who's more of a pass pro guy, like, their scheme that they go through against every team in the NFL has to be, like, I don't even know who the defensive coordinator is for Kansas City, but that guy
Spags
has to be worth his weight in gold and then some, because Mahomes doesn't exist. On one side, like, think about how good of defenses Tom Brady had throughout his career. I feel like the Chiefs literally just sat there and watched and were like, oh, that's all we have to do?
Yep.
And then they literally just did exactly that.
I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's like the best teams in the NFL are a perfect marriage between coaching and talent. Like, the reason the Patriots won so many goddamn Super Bowls because they had the best coach and the best quarterback. It's the same reason it's going to happen with the Chiefs. It's the same reason that we have, the Niners up here, is because Shanahan has all of that talent on his roster. And then sometimes there's enough talent on a roster to be able to overcome some weaker coaching. Like, I'm not exactly how good of a coach Sean McDermott is, but I know Josh Allen is a fucking baller. I don't know how good of a coach Mike McCarthy is anymore, but I know that the Cowboys have a lot of top-end talent. I don't know how good of a coach Sirianni is
holding.
But you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside, so sometimes it just doesn't fucking matter. And you still have a Lane Johnson, and you got Saquon. I'm not that high on Hurts, but it's like – but then there's coaches that uplift talent. It's like Dan Campbell's gotten the most out of this Lions team. And even like the Ravens, it's like their offensive line isn't great, but they're always going to be solid enough because they have the purple and black on them, and Harbaugh's going to get the most out of those guys, and then Lamar will be able to juice it. But
I think to end this thing too,
yeah.
I want to say that exactly what you just said is the biggest difference between college and NFL, right? Like, it is nothing to do with the level of talent on the field as much in the NFL as it does the coaching, and then vice versa at college. Like, talent will matter first, coaching will come second. And so I think because for folks like myself, I'm way more intrigued by having less parity in football. So I'm way more intrigued by seeing a more talented but less well-coached team go up against a more well coached and less talented team almost every single day of the week. It's the same why people love March Madness. It's why people love college athletics in general. But if you can't sit down and just shut the fuck up and understand how good some of these guys are at their jobs at an NFL level, specifically the coordinators, like the head coaches get a lot of love and a lot of praise in place of their coordinators a lot of the times. And like Ben Johnson might be the best example we've probably discussed all night. As soon as Ben Johnson stepped into Detroit, they became a different team.
Yep.
They completely transformed who we thought they were. They became fun to watch, which I don't think we've been able to say about the Detroit Lions in over a decade.
Yep.
And then
Since
all of a
Megatron.
sudden you're like, yeah, literally because of one player. It had
Yep.
nothing to do with coaching. It was entirely because you were watching the greatest wide receiver of all time exist, right? Will people call him the greatest? Maybe not, but they should, because he played on the fucking Lions. And that
He
used
lived
to
in
mean
fucking
something.
Detroit, which is the Cleveland of
Right.
Michigan.
Right. And that used to mean something, right? Playing for the Lions. It used to mean you knew you sucked. No longer. And honestly, the city of Detroit has been on the come up. I went there a couple of years ago, and they've been pumping money into downtown Detroit. There's way less crackheads than I thought there would be. Honestly, I see more on a day-to-day basis here in Austin, and that's a conversation for a different day. But the state of the NFL right now, I know everybody is going to be all in on it's the Chiefs versus the Niners. There's way more competition in the NFL right now than there has been in many years. Many years. Are the Bills there? No, they're not. They took a huge step back in my mind, and it might be for the best, because if they were the closest thing to competing for the AFC North, or not the North, but the AFC as a whole, we're in a way better spot right now as NFL fans than we have been in a long time. Even though Mahomes still exists, even though the 49ers still dominated tonight, the season will be disgustingly fun to watch. And I think week one proved that for a number of reasons, but I'm excited to see a lot of that unfold. And I'm excited to watch Cowboys fans come up with more excuses as to why their team sucks, other than the fact that Jerry Jones is still alive and in charge of it.
Yes. All right. So we will be, as Adam just said, we'll be really excited for the rest of the season, and we'll be talking about it the rest of the season. Hopefully we can have Adam Capshaw on as often as possible, because this has been very, very fun. You can listen to him later this week on Thursday, previewing the Saturday slate, week 3 of college football with Texas Pete and Jack Turner. Rent Money will be out on Thursday, and then we'll be back again on Friday previewing this weekend of football games.
Yeah, and I know they're not going to be listening to this pod either, so I can kind of get this off my chest quickly. Neither of them do anything at all. Like, for the pod, for themselves, like, I swear to God, they do half an hour of research before it starts, and then they jump on and they just talk. I think Fultz tried a little bit more than he did week 1. He finally, like, we went week 0 and week 1. We had 0 wins out of Fultz. But then, lo and behold, week 2, he had, I think, 2. So, congratulations.
He's on the up. Hey, he's going up. He's just learning, He's the newest Pop-Off Pod real
dude,
member.
It is not easy. And granted, I do want to start doing more of NFL bets, because for those that listen to Rent Money, that it is fully, wholeheartedly, like, it is a betting podcast. So we're looking at spreads, totals, maybe a money line if it's juicy. That's it. For the NFL, like, there's an entire prop market we have yet to touch, the fantasy market within the prop market, and everything else that we already do on Rent Money. It's so tough because of how much things change on a dime with the betting market for NFL teams. One injury and a line can jump, anywhere from 2 to 3 points in 10 minutes. And so it's like, it's tough trying to bet on the NFL when it comes to spreads and totals, but we could start doing a better job of that. And I'll start making that more of my personal mission as, the Rent Money aspect. Maybe we do a mini Rent Money segment on future episodes. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Ralph, appreciate you having me, man.
Of course. Thank you guys for listening. Hope everybody has a great rest of their week. And I mean, yeah, the moment that we're publishing this, there's going to be football on again in 2 days. So gear up for Thursday Night Football, and we'll be recapping that, and you'll hear us Friday. So as always, thank you for listening. We love you. We will see you on the other side. Peace out.
And never forget 9/11.
I'm loving the pop off.